Well, good evening. Good evening. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, October 10th. Ah, hope everyone's doing well. So, we're going to pick back up where we left off at our last book reading, which is chapter 4. And we're going to start just at a place in the book on page 94. So if you happen to be following along, that's where we're going to start. Did you want to say something before we get going?
Quite a bit of something.
Oh,
So, um, where we were last time is we were talking about the square roots and how the Vesica Pisces, the Vesica Piscis can be pronounced both ways, um, how it generates all the square roots needed for creation. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in the context of our book. But I wanted to go into it a little bit more so it made sense, because it sounds like such a, okay, whatever that means, all the square roots. But I wanted to show you a little more. So I put a slideshow together very quickly that's going to show how all these square roots, the square root of 2, the square root of 3, and the square root of 5, show up everywhere in creation, and creation depends upon them. So, with having said that, I'm going to show you this again. And here's something I good. I fixed it so you can see my arrow, where you can see where it's pointing. So you can see in the Vesica Pisces, we have the square root of 2 from here to here. The long diagonal gives us the square root of 5. And the height from here to here gives us the square root of 3. So all these are square roots, and they're strange numbers. They never end. They're just like one point. It just keeps going, going, going after the decimal point. So I wanted to show you, if we take the Vesica Piscis, it creates the very first polygon, which is a triangle. And if you take a triangle and take the height of that triangle and divide it by 1/2 of the side length, you're going to have the square root of 3. So that's what happens. You get the square root of 3 with all equilateral triangles. When you work with a tetrahedron, which is the one of the Platonic solids, where you take a triangle on each face, and if you take that tetrahedron, if you make one of the sides, all of the sides actually, equal to 1, then the area of that tetrahedron is the square root of 3. So as we look at all the different polygons, a triangle, a square, next after 4 sides is 5 sides, then 6 sides. These are the main polygons that start creating our reality. And if you look at a cube, or you look at the face of the cube, you see the diagonal, that's equal to the square root of 2. If you look at the point of the cube, you get a hexagon. And what I mean by this is that when you take a 3-dimensional form, you can project light through it onto a flat surface. And from one direction, you have a square. You know, if you were infinitely far where the lens was, you wouldn't see the edges of this, but you'd see it just as a square. Then you'd have the square root of 2 across the diagonal. If you put it on its edge, you see how it shows up as a rectangle? Well, this side divided into the long side of the rectangle is equal to the square root of 2. If you look at it on point, this is what we're talking about here. You see, on point, you take the length of one of the sides and then divide that into the length going across, a, and that's the square root of 3. So you see how the square root of 3, the square root of 2, it keeps showing up in everything that we make in this creation. And if you look at the cube and you go from one corner to the opposite corner, if this side is equal to 1, this is equal to the square root of 3. So next, if we look at a 5-sided form, that's what gives us the relationship of phi. And that means if this side is divided into this length, it equals phi. And this short side divided into this length is also equal to phi. This divided into this is equal to phi. And what phi is the square root of 5 plus 1 divided by 2 gives us this strange number that keeps going. And this is the way everything in creation is that is organic, that is alive. Plants, animals, insects, the DNA of our cells, our structure is based on phi. You know, this whole picture, which we'll get into later, is talking about dividing the hand into the elbow, gives us the phi ratio. So what that means is this caliper lets me show you that my finger, the first digit into the whole finger, is in a phi ratio relationship. The finger to the hand to the elbow. So phi is working with the square root of 5. So now you're starting to see how everything in creation, all the nautilus shells, the way plants distribute, galaxies work with phi, which is the square root of 5. So all of these platonic solids, there are only 5, but we already talked about how the surface area of a tetrahedron is working with the square root of 3. Well, when you take platonic solids like an octahedron and a cube, or an icosahedron and a dodecahedron, they dance together in certain patterns. And what I mean by that is here we have a cube in one direction that the point of each cube is going through the face of each of the octahedron sides. And the octahedron is going through the face of each of the cube sides. So this makes them duals, is what they're called, when they create that kind of relationship. And when you look at that relationship, the way they dance together, the long side divided by the short side of the cube is equal to the square root of 2. If I get a side or a perspective that starts to work with triangles in it, like this direction, then you're going to see the square root of 3. And from certain perspectives, you can get the phi ratio, the square root of 5. And the dodecahedron and the icosahedron, which are these two forms, two of the Platonic solids, they dance together like this. This is the dual of an icosahedron and a dodecahedron. And again, if you take the long side of one of the geometries, divide it by the short side, you're going to get the phi ratio, which is working with the square root of 5. So this goes on and on. All I'm trying to tell you is that when I said everything in creation depends upon these particular 3 square roots that are generated by the Vesica Pisces, and you have to include a circle into all the constructs of things, which works with pi. So that's working with pi, another irrational number. That gives us and that's made by the 2 circles that come apart to make the Vesica Pisces. So that's why I said this creates everything in creation. And so hopefully that made a little bit of sense. I
Okay.
mean, I just wanted to show you how those things show up again and again and again. It's not just a bunch of words. It's how reality is created. And it all starts with a Vesica Pisces creating those 3 roots and working with the circumference of the circles, which is pi. So,
Before we continue on page 94, does anybody have a question or a need for clarification from what Gregory just went through? If you do, just raise your hand. That's under reactions. You can do that. Or you can also message us in the chat and we'll check on that. Okay? All right. So let's continue with that. Page 94.
okay.
Here we go. Like the roots of a tree, the square root of 2, 3, and 5 excuse me, are essential for supporting the growth of all geometry. They are often invisible as roots are, but the support is there as seen in the diagonal of a square that's equal to the square root of 2 and the height of 2 equilateral triangles divided by the base that equals the square root of 3. In this book on sacred geometry, in his book on sacred geometry, Robert Lawler shares that the geometric root is an archetype expression of the assimilative, generating, transformative function, which is root. Transformative, that it's necessary for creation in order to go from from null point into the use of energy into action and creation. Various roots display the qualities of different energetic flows. We can draw upon the unique the unique quality of each root through the application of sacred geometry. It's so much easier to see it tangibly rather than just on a page scribbles of all of these different mathematical signatures. What is meant by this statement is that square roots of numbers have more and many important applications in mathematics, science, and engineering. However, in each of these cases, they are represented by intangible concepts. Numerically, each of these roots and pi are called infinite decimals or irrational numbers because they go on forever with an infinite string of numbers after the decimal point. The 3 dots at the end of each number represent this infinite progression. There is no resolution, no way to embrace them as a complete expression. They are only mental concepts that are considered irrational and non relatable. These roots are called infinite decimals or irrational numbers because they go on forever, but in geometry, they can be perfectly reconciled. And shall I read these numbers? Pi equals 3.1415926, and that goes on forever. Square root of 2 equals 1.4142135, and on. Square root of 3 is equal to 1.7320508, and continues on. And the square root of 5 is equal to 2.2, 2.2360679, and on. Through sacred geometry, they can be expressed as physical constructs that are tangible, relatable, and physically resonant with the principles that created them. We witness this in their representation through the Vesica Pisces. We can draw each of these roots as physical lines of a certain proportion within a square, triangle, or rectangle. The roots are expressed in a definite, tangible, relatable manner. They are no longer imaginary or irrational. To raise them into resonance with our environment and our physical and subtle bodies, we need to lift them off the two-dimensional page and start constructing three-dimensional geometries with them. With a three-dimensional physical, what's that?
Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
With a three-dimensional physical geometry, you have an opportunity to feel, see, and bring into your body the experience of these roots. That's what we've demonstrated with all the geometries that we create. We've taken irrational, mental, universal archetypes and made them into physical constructs that start to vibrate, just the way a C tuning fork, when it's properly made, will vibrate with a C tone. The geometries we create bring these abstract principles into physical reality so your body can experience it rather than remaining in the mental world of abstract thoughts. So interesting, we go from the mental into a physicality, into something we can experience, we can feel it, we can interact with it, with our bodies. The geometries allow us to anchor these higher principles into the physical world. This explains why people feel the various geometries we create and why they form energetic fields to support meditation and healing work and are a positive influence in our environment. They are liaisons to the energetic qualities of universe. When we meditate under a beautiful form called the Merkaba of oneness, we can connect at much higher levels because the geometries that we've created open us to work with that resonance. This allows us to come into a flow of energy and drink from that fountain so we can experience universality, expand the value of our lives, and focus on what is joyful and loving. These roots spring into life through sacred geometry. And it's your turn now.
Okay. So um, I'm starting with this image, which is the third element formed, which is the Vesica Pisces. It forms the very first polygon. You can't have a polygon until you've got at least three sides. So it starts with a three-sided triangle. And if you add up all the degrees inside a triangle, it always equals 180 degrees. If it's tall and skinny, if it's short and fat, all the angles of a triangle always equal 180 degrees. And so the triangle becomes a measure of all the other polygons. And what that means is that when you go from 3 sides to 4 sides, you're going to jump by 180 degrees to get to a square. And then you keep jumping from one polygon to another through the measure of a triangle's 180 degrees. So it's just another way that universe is keeping things in a regular fashion. Things do not happen in a random way. They appear random often from our perspective, but the truth is everything is coordinated in this reality through the way everything is constructed. And our interactions, the more we start to understand how we interact with this reality, that's also a coordinated dance that we're totally responsible for. But that can take a lifetime to start to realize. The faster we do, the better things go for us. So, the power of the third element keeps expressing itself more and more as we discover that it also forms the first polygon, a 3-sided triangle. A polygon is a geometry drawn on a flat plane that is made up of 3 or more straight lines. The number of degrees inside every triangle adds up to 180 degrees, regardless of its shape. Long or short, skinny or fat, every polygon with 3 sides has interior angles that equal 180 degrees, and it becomes the base measure for all other polygons. In other words, if we add 180 degrees to a triangle, we get 360 degrees. Whoops, where is it? There it is. We get 360 degrees, which is a square. So a 4-sided quadrilateral, like a square, a rectangle, or a diamond, also has 360 degrees within its interior angles. In this way, the Vesica Piscis leads us to all of the polygons. In addition, using only a compass and a straight edge, we can construct all of the polygons with the Vesica Piscis as the seed geometry. So as you see here, when we go to 5 sides, 180 degrees means it's 540 degrees. Another 180 gives us a hexagon, and so on. It keeps going like this forever. And interestingly, something that we're going to see more and more is that of the basic 9 numbers, 1 through 9, 9 is the completion number. That means that everything sacred always resolves into 9. So that means 180 degrees, that's 1 plus 8 is 9. 360 degrees equals 9. 540, 9. And you see, 9 is always what everything reduces to. And the exterior angles of a polygon, like they always equal 360 degrees, which is equal to the circle that encapsulates them. So that means that the interior angle is 60. If you have a flat line, the exterior angle is 120. You add them all up, 360. A square is the only polygon where the interior angles and the exterior angles are the same, 90 degrees. So again, the magic of how everything in universe fits together perfectly in patterns and rhythms and cycles. And that's what makes sacred geometry sacred. When we start discovering that there are immutable patterns that are driving all of creation. And when we follow those patterns in the tools we create, in the things we do in our life, we start dancing with the way universe was created, and that starts affecting the dance of our life to be more in tune with the natural flow of God, of all that is, of the way things are created. So, as shown in this figure that we were just talking about, we can carry on with adding 180 degrees to arrive at the next polygon with one additional side. This progression will continue until the number of sides is indistinguishable from a circle. The threeness of the triangle with its 180 degrees interior angles is the unit of measure that steps us through all other polygons. They all spring from the triangle, which gives birth to so much more than we may have realized. All the regular polygons fit within a circle, where each point of the polygon rests on the circle's edge. Each polygon is contained by a circle of 360 degrees, as we already discussed. An interesting demonstration of the manner in which each polygon doubly displays this fact is found in their exterior angles. A straight line divides a circle in half and equals 180 degrees. If we extend the edge of each polygon with a straight line, and that's what we were talking about over here with the straight line coming out from the edge of the triangle, minus let's see, if we extend the edge of each polygon with a straight line, the exterior angle is 180 degrees minus the interior angle. So as you can see with the example of the triangle, this formula gives us three angles of 120 degrees because we have a flat 180, 60 taken away from that gives us 120. And then those total exterior angles always add up to a circle. The total of the exterior angles in every polygon equals 360 degrees. Not only does each polygon fit within a circle, it is also surrounded in its exterior angles by the number of degrees contained by a circle, 360 degrees.
Wow. Abstract patterns have practical applications, as you are seeing with our dialogue here. A practical application of this knowledge is demonstrated by the fact that a circle understood as source unity surrounds all 2D polygons twice. What we've done at Metaforms with some of our jewelry pieces um, that are expressed in 2D is to put the 2D geometries within a circle, which creates a unity from the separate components, allowing the parts to act as a whole. All the abstract concepts we are sharing have practical applications in our physical world. By building physical tools that incorporate the ways in which the higher dimensional realms express themselves, we can create resonant antenna systems that support the flow of higher dimensional energy into our environment. Many of these frequencies are needed for our health and well being. However, as we've shared before, our present day technology blocks these vital energies and sadly introduces many more toxic elements of its own. If we look at the degrees in this ascending list of polygons, a remarkable pattern unfolds. First, we can remove the zeros as we've learned that they don't change the root, only the magnitude. We now have series of angles 36, 54, 72, 108. This series repeats indefinitely.
So this is what we're talking about. If you look at the 360 degrees, 540, as we go up, we keep seeing this pattern of 36, 54, 72, 108. And it keeps going because if you have 9 sides, which is a total of 1,260 degrees, that reduces to 36 by adding the first two numbers, 1 and 2, and then 6. So you've got 36 again. A 10-sided figure is 1,440 degrees. You add the first two numbers, which is 5, and the last one is 54. And then an 11-sided figure has 1,620 degrees. Adding the first two gives us 72, or 77 rather, and the last one makes it 72. So you see, we keep using these same numbers again and again, no matter how many sides we're going to have. And it's a very important pattern that we will start to discover later shows up in all of creation, all of life. So this series of numbers show up again and again in ancient sacred texts and is a pattern of consciousness, instilling the universal design of life and awareness into every aspect of creation, beginning with 3. So you see, 3 is the root. Remember how we once had a quotation from Nikolai Tesla, if you only understood the importance of 3, 6, and 9. We're starting to share that with you. This is the importance of 3 that is generating all of life, all of creation, because the completion number of 9 is 3 times 3, 3 squared. So it's an aspect of 3. Another important pattern to recognize is that the total number of degrees in every polygon reduces to 9. See, I get excited when I see the pictures. I tell you all this. Now I get to read it to you. So maybe it goes in twice. That's good. When all the digits are added together, the total is 9. This is true for all geometric solids and all sacred numbers. So that means you add up every platonic solid, the degrees reduces to 9. Every geometry, all the Euclidean geometries, which are unequal faces, squares and triangles mixed, things like that, always all the numbers reduce to 9. every sacred number in every sacred text in Christianity, in the Vedic scriptures, in Kabbalah, in all of the Jewish scriptures, in every single scripture in creation, they all have numbers that reduce to 9. So there's an important thing to understand there. This is true for all geometric solids, all sacred numbers in all sacred texts as well. It makes no difference what units of measure are used. So this is where you start seeing something interesting. These numbers start working across different units of measure: degrees, miles, years. So units of measure like inches, feet, miles, diameters, or degrees, or units of vibration, like we talked about hertz. You're going to find certain vibrational frequencies in hertz, and sound all have relationships to time. And even though the measures change, the numbers stay consistent and resonant with each other. That's amazing. At least I think it's amazing. In many texts, the information is hidden as numbers of beads, fish, plants, or warriors. If it's an important sacred number, it will reduce to 9, which is 3 squared. Number 9 is the completion number, the resonant container of source factors. Resonance can occur between aspects of creation that appear separate, such as time and space. We have our whole time-space continuum, and we think it's all unrelated, one thing to another, but it's all connected. It's all a unity. It's all a totality. And that's what sacred geometry shows us. That's what all these different numbers expressed in different ways show us, that there's resonance, that energy flows from time into space, into frequency, into shape and degrees. So, number 3 starts the energy moving in the physical world, creating the diversity of form. And the squared aspect of 3 completes this reality through 9 as the container. Applying what we've learned from 3 and 6, or 3 and 9, excuse me. All the information we are sharing has greater purpose beyond the academic. One significant aspect of 3 is the relationship it triggers to take us beyond self and duality. The creative force, spirit, is embodied in everything. So consciously working with the quality of 3 allows us to embody unity and higher connections. Since our focus with geometries we build is to enhance those higher connections, we found that braiding 3 wires together that are then coiled creates a higher dimensional resonance past 4th dimensional energy flows. So we're talking about down here at the bottom of this, I've got this ring. We call them our causal rings, and they are 3 wires that are wrapped. In essence, they were inspired by a man that I knew and was friends with Slim Sperling, who was working with two wires wrapped. And two wires work with the physical dimension, fourth dimensional realities, and thought forms. But when you start working with three, you start jumping into higher dimensional realities. So that's probably what I'm going to say next if I read it. Let's see. So we found that braiding three wires together that are then coiled, so that's what we're doing with this, creates a higher dimensional resonance past fourth dimensional energy flows. So two twisted wires work with lower dimensional vibrations and for physical healing and plant growth. When we wrap coils in our pendants and in our geometric forms, we always use 9 wraps or a multiple of 9. So that means I don't have anything up here. When we make a coil in something, we always have 9 complete circuits of that coil. And that's what I mean by 9 wraps or a multiple of 9. And remember from the first chapter that energy moves in spirals. We talked about that. So reinforcing the natural movement of energy by constructing a spiral increases the flow by following a universal pattern. Nikolai Tesla accomplished this in a similar way with his Tesla coils for working with electricity. Constructing coils with 9 wraps or multiples of 9 creates the strongest energetic resonance with higher realms because it's a completion number. If you do 8 wraps or 7 or any other number, it's not as strong as 9. And working with 3 wires is stronger than wrapping 4 or 5 or 2. It's just the way we are working with universal patterns and bringing it in to this reality.
Okay, let's wrap up this chapter. Okay. So here's a moment to reflect from chapter 4. We live in a universe of infinite and dynamic creation that fills every moment with a new life, all an offspring of Source. The imbued consciousness reflects magnificent patterns and purpose in the cycles of evolution. Our choice is to expand awareness and knowledge to meet each of these relationships with sincere appreciation. As we find ourselves through the fragrance of a flower, the strength of a tree, or the joy of another human, we are offered a moment to experience divine relationship with all life. Our physical senses speak to what is created, yet our higher non physical senses lend love to the essence of all, the true gift of spirit. Each moment is an opportunity to reclaim our connection by being fully present. As seen in the expanse of diversity, we have the freedom to build our lives just as a flower, bird, and mineral evolves and grows in beauty, all united yet distinctly individualized. When we are in the flow of creation, we thrive with gratitude. Okay, so I think that's a nice way to wrap up a lot of very fundamental, but very heady, very mathematical information, but
You know,
fundamental to understand the universe, to understand these universal principles that we can build on in every aspect.
You know, the interesting thing is, we didn't write the book so many years ago. People were always saying, are you going to write a book? Are you going to write a book? And it took us a long time because, in part, we were building tools that we were shown, that we were guided to do so many of these, do so much of that. And it wasn't until it was time to write the book that it started making sense to me. We kind of reverse engineered what we built to figure out, well, what were the universal archetypes we were following? How is it that universe describes itself this way? And we were told to build things, and they worked to affect our fields, to affect our energy. And then we were able to go, oh, that's why they work. And it took me a while to figure that out. I was just following guidance and then discovered there was a reason behind all of it. And so I think, you always hear the phrase, everything happens at the right time in its own time. And so it is
And
with
so
our
it
book.
is. And so it is. And so let's move into chapter 5, which is the patterns that ground reality. The first three numbers, 1, 2, and 3, compose the divine trinity and form the invisible support for the growth of all creation. The number 3 emerges as the initiating catalyst to set the next cycle in motion. The following three numbers, 4, 5, and 6, are the structures that define how our reality works. They define how resonant frequencies are created using these numbers as building blocks. By following their lead as we flow with creation, by dancing in the same rhythms as universe. The number 4 is responsible for bringing us into physical realm. We see this reflected in many of our metaphors, as with the 4 corners of the world, the 4 directions, and the 4 physical elements of air, fire, water, and earth. Okay, are you going to go with the
Okay,
images
now,
now?
this isn't, and I don't have this as an image, it's in the book. So if you can see at the bottom, we're looking at a circle with a dot in the center and a circle with a cross, the 4 corners of the earth. So that's an image that I don't have on the screen. The circle with a dot in the center is recognized as the astrological symbol for the sun. And remember, that is such a divine image that it is also the symbol for gold, the symbol for God, the symbol for soul. It's many places we have it as the center of the eye. We have it as the eye on our dollar bill, which is a circle with a dot in the center. So the symbol for the earth is the other one I showed you, the circle with a cross in the center, which neatly divides it into 4 equilateral sections, like the 4 seasons of a year. At the center of the cross are the 4 corners. So if you go into the very center, you see 4 different angles around the center of 90 degrees each, which points out a very curious relationship. As we've already discussed, the circle is understood as source, God, and the heavens above, like the sun. So the physical solid made of 6 squares, the cube, and the square itself have come to personify the earth and physicality. So the two shapes couldn't be really more different. Heaven, God, and physical firmament, earth. And yet, the two shapes couldn't be more different, with one being made of smooth, infinite curve, evoking feminine receptivity, and the other having sharp, angular corners, seen as male assertiveness. Ancient sacred geometers tried to reconcile this difference by squaring the circle, which meant they found mathematical and geometrical ways to create the same area inside a matched square and a circle. So they both had the same equal area. Or they found a way to have the perimeters, the outside length, be equal. That's how they had to create that relationship. Now, degrees reflect the energy of where shapes are found or used. The circle and the square are quintessentially displays of as above, so below. They appear to be so different, as far apart as heaven and earth, yet their essential overlap is understood by recognizing the 360 degrees of a circle are equal to the 360 degrees of the square. They are truly resonant and reflections of each other, separated by outer perspectives. The similarities that exist escape our awareness if we only maintain the outside view. So internally, they both have 360 degrees, but externally, the circle and the square seem to be separate, but they are one in resonance, harmonically. This becomes a powerful metaphor to help understand that even though we look different on the outside, with all human beings having different features, skin colors, sizes, shapes, and belief systems, the internal resonance is what matters. The world gets caught up in the duality and separation principles of the binary two, rather than working with the more evolved principles of resonance, as demonstrated by the revelations of four. That's what we're starting to see in the manifestation of physical three-dimensional reality. That's what four gives us. The difference on the outside are not important when you look at the resonance that's created inside. Heaven and earth are resonant with each other when we understand this perspective and bring it into our lives. Everything can be resonant and connect when we dig deeply.
Okay. All right. We're on page 105, From Duality to Co-Creation. We're living in a time that is strongly focused on polarity. What if we viewed life as a progression from duality into co-creation, recognizing the higher values of what universe really is and who we are? This way, we shift our perspective in how we see things and perceive our lives. Computer technology influences all our lives very dramatically, as well as massive information gathering and expanding artificial intelligence, AI. Computer systems are based on a binary system, one and two, black and white, yes and no. Isn't that a reflection of what we see right now in our world? It seems more and more difficult to accept all the differences and wonderful gradients into the circle of possibilities. Instead, we tend to be focused on the polarity and separation that keeps the forces of duality in power. Now, scientists are developing quantum computers and a higher computation capability that goes beyond the binary system and works within a quantum world of potential that more clearly aligns with the natural world. We may begin to believe, or we may begin to leave behind the limitations of duality and polarity and progress to creating new ways of coming together that align with the natural order of universal principles. And when we look out at what's going on right now in our lives, so many things that we look at them and they seem so polarized, so out of balance, so much rain in one area of the world, and then somewhere else where there's hardly anything happening. And yet, what if we look at this as part of this cycle that's bringing us into unity, into a way of coming back into the access and recognition of wholeness and unity? So, the more people understand universal secrets and the magnificence of creation in this way, the more empowered they become to move civilization into a path of wholeness. If we get stuck at the number two with its duality and separation, it's impossible for us to evolve. We need to interact with all aspects of this reality and see its reflection within us as well. These numbers show us a natural path and a cycle of evolution to grow and become fully human.
Okay.
Okay, so have a wonderful next couple of weeks. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for being patient with us. We just went through, thank you.
Oh,
We just went through a big move and we're still in the process of resetting up and creating new systems and whatnot. So thank you so much for your patience. We're glad to be back on with everyone again. So
thank you and blessings.
blessings.